Imagine having your body shattered by a ball of iron and yet not dying. Now imagine that this wound wasn't a punishment, but a beginning, a breath, a rupture between two worlds, the one of earthly glory and the one of God's glory. He was born Iñigo López de Loyola, a name made for war, for nobility, for the courts of Castile and the pride of an empire. But God wanted him for something infinitely more daring, to set souls on fire. At the moment when the French cannonball struck his leg at the Battle of Pamplona, Iñigo believed his life was over. But heaven was smiling, because God knew a general was being born there, not to conquer territories, but to reclaim hearts. What if I told you that the most humiliating pain in your life might be the gate to your highest mission? What if the one who seems defeated is only being trained for eternity? What will be revealed at the end of this story may turn your faith upside down. Because the man who founded the Society of Jesus did not begin as a saint. He began as proud, vain, empty. But that's exactly when heaven entered. So take a deep breath. Imagine the silence after the explosion. Imagine a broken body, bleeding, motionless, and a heart whispering, "Lord, why not me?" If you've ever felt like God pulled you off a path that seemed promising, if you've ever lost everything just to discover you were still whole, if your soul has ever bled in silence, then subscribe to this channel now, because this story will ignite something inside of you that may have been asleep for far too long. If your soul already felt something in just these opening seconds, hit subscribe now. Saint Ignatius is about to show you that the real war happens within, and the victory always belongs to heaven. The boy with the sword was born for the altar, year 1491, Spain, Basque country. In the noble house of Loyola, among gleaming armor and commanding voices, Iñigo López was born. The youngest of 13 siblings, still in swaddling clothes, he already breathed the air of military honor and family pride. The mansion's halls smelled of leather, wine, and destiny. From an early age, his eyes sought the shine of swords, not the candles of the altar. His heart beat for the feats of chivalry, for the romances of Amadis of Gaul, for the glories of great lords. Faith? It was background music, ancestral symbol, but not yet inner fire. Fate led him to Castile. There, under the protection of Juan Velázquez de Cuellar, one of the kingdom's most powerful men, Iñigo grew up among dances, gambling, duels, and seductions. He was elegant, daring, witty. He belonged to the world. When his protector died, Iñigo didn't hesitate. He enlisted to serve the Viceroy of Navarre, the Duke of Nájera. He craved war. He craved fame. He wanted his name immortalized, not in heaven, but in the chronicles of men. But God had other plans. It was in Pamplona that destiny changed armor. The French were attacking, the Castilians were retreating, and Iñigo, reckless, defied them all. "I will not run." A cannonball struck him down, shattered his leg, nearly killed him, but there, on the cold ground between blood and screams, something began to change. Immobilized for months, Iñigo was thrown into the prison of his own body. No more dances, battles, or glory, only the ceiling, the boredom, and a few forgotten books about saints and Christ. At first he complained, then he read, and then he wept. The lives of Francis of Assisi, Saint Dominic, Mary of Egypt, and Christ himself. And that question pierced his soul like a spear. If they could give everything for love of the kingdom, why not I? It was there that the night fell, and a new man began to rise. The chivalric romances dissolved. In their place, a wild hunger for something eternal. He no longer wanted to serve a king of flesh, but the king of heaven, and that thirst would set the world on fire. The soul that once rode for glory now crawled for grace. The knight was standing, but still broken inside. It wasn't the leg that hurt, and it was the soul. It groaned, it got lost, it no longer knew where to go. Inigo leaves his home in silence. With a heart pounding like a sacred war drum, he sets out. He abandons his fine clothes, donates his sword, and lays his vanity at the feet of the Virgin in Montserrat. He dresses in sackcloth, enters Manresa, and dives into the desert of himself. There he didn't find harps and angels. He found silence. Silence and darkness. For months he lived by begging, slept wherever he could, fainted from fasting, punished his body with brutal penances, as if each pain could redeem his sins. But within him, a more cruel abyss swallowed him. Doubt. The faith that once ignited him now accused him. Did God really want him? Was he worthy? Had his whole story been a mistake, a delusion, an illusion? In a corner of a monastery cell, his body exhausted and mind in ruins, Inigo began to wish for death. The temptation of suicide brushed his spirit. Perhaps God wants me out of the way, he thought. But something insisted inside him. The soul that has been touched by the divine will never be left on the ground. Crying beside the river Cardona, he let go. And then, like a sunrise within his chest, something happened. In his own words, while sitting there, the eyes of my understanding began to open. In the whole course of my life, even up to the age of 62, it never seemed to me that I had received so much as on that occasion. He didn't see with his eyes. He saw with his spirit. The spiritual world was unveiled. The scriptures, the mysteries, the saints, the crucified Christ, all shone in a new light. It was as if God had torn the veil between worlds and spoken, finally, to his wounded soul. But the battle wasn't over. Inigo went through the Inquisition, was imprisoned, accused, silenced. In Alcalá and Salamanca, he faced the suspicion of those who couldn't comprehend his fire. But not even prison silenced him. Not even prohibition stopped him, because the one who has seen the invisible can no longer live for the visible world. The vision that brought him to his knees was the same that would raise an army of souls. He was no longer Inigo, he was Ignatius, a new name, a new mission, a new baptism. In Paris, amid books and persecutions, pain and distrust, Ignatius was not just studying Latin or theology. He was studying souls, listening to hearts, observing the battlefield where the greatest wars are fought, inside the mind, between thoughts, between choices. And thus the most powerful weapon he would ever wield was born: the spiritual exercises. A small book, a manual of fire and silence. Pages not written in ink, but in tears and renunciations. There, Ignatius drew a spiritual path capable of disarming pride, illuminating chaos, and training the soul to hear God in the deepest echo of the self. A retreat, a calling, an inner war for truth. Those who made the exercises, bishops, young people, beggars, intellectuals, came out transformed. It was as if a divine ember burned within them, revealing what was hidden and pulling the soul out of mediocrity. But the miracle didn't stop there. On the road to Rome, accompanied by two spiritual brothers, Ignatius stops at a small chapel in La Storta. He kneels, he prays, and then the experience, the vision, the rupture between heaven and earth. He sees Christ carrying the cross, and beside Jesus, the Father, and he hears the words that seal his mission: "I want you to take him as your servant." His heart explodes. He is no longer a wanderer. He is a chosen one, not for human glories, but for the foundation of an invisible army, the Society of Jesus. On August 15, 1534, in the crypt of Montmartre, 7 men made sacred vows: poverty, chastity, obedience, and above all, to go wherever the Pope commands without question. That phrase would be the spear, the banner, the code of the new order. They did not seek power, they sought souls. They did not want gold, they wanted hearts. The world began to change. Missions in Europe, India, Japan, Brazil, schools, refugees, hospitals, retreats, conversions. The Jesuits emerged like silent fire, illuminating the darkest corners of the earth. And all this was born from the broken leg of a vain soldier, from sleepless nights in Manresa, from tears by the Cardinal, from a soul that dared to ask, "Lord, what do you want from me?" And what if your crisis is not the end, but the foundation of something eternal? How many times have you felt like Ignatius in Manresa? Lost, silenced, rejected. How many nights have you woken up with a tight chest, unsure if you even believe in anything or in yourself? Today, we call it spiritual burnout, exhausted faith, saturated soul. Anxiety eats away, pressure suffocates. You look to heaven, and it seems mute. But listen, it was in that silence that God spoke to Ignatius. Manresa wasn't punishment, it was labor. The desert wasn't abandonment, it was a training ground of heaven. Ignatius didn't become a saint because he had answers. He became a saint because he kept going, even without them. And you? Have you been carrying the weight of the world on your back? Have you prayed and felt like nothing is happening? Have you wanted to give up because you feel alone in this internal war? Then hear this. Ignatius cried too. He doubted too. He wanted to disappear too. But it was exactly there that heaven came down. He turned crisis into flame, solitude into listening, failure into mission, and so can you. Because the pain you carry now may be shaping your calling. Because what seems like defeat today may be God carving space inside you for something that hasn't been born yet. The spiritual exercises he wrote weren't made for perfect monks. They were made for weary souls, for broken hearts, for people like me and like you. If this pain reminds you of something you're living right now, write "I believe" in the comments and share this story with someone who needs to hear it now, someone who's on the verge of giving up, someone in their own Manresa who needs to remember that there's still light. He slept only 4 hours a night, but he dreamed of the infinite. Rome, 1556. The city pulsed with contrasts. Palaces and beggars, golden domes and shadowed alleys, papal power and children's hunger, and in the midst of it all, an aged, sick, exhausted man, yet burning. Ignatius had already founded schools, sent missionaries across the world, faced scarcity, persecution, betrayals and misunderstandings. Even so, he kept going. He catechized children in the streets, cared for repentant prostitutes, took in orphans, wrote letters guiding his brothers, and wept in prayer for the church and for souls. His days were numbered, cirrhosis advanced, gallstones tormented him. But he did not ask for healing, he asked for souls. In the simple cell where he lived, he refused honors. He continued to serve, and then at dawn on July 31st, 1556, the light that had guided him for decades took him back to the Father. Beneath the altar of the Church of the Jesuits in Rome, his remains lie, but his work did not rest. Today, the Society of Jesus is present on every continent. Thousands undertake the spiritual exercises every year. Popes, cardinals, doctors, mothers, young people, pilgrims, and the weary all find in that small manual of fire and introspection a path to find heaven again. And that vain young man who once dreamed of battles and human glory became the patron saint of all spiritual retreats, the apostle of discernment, the knight who taught the modern soul to hear God amid the noise. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. 1 Corinthians 10:31, and this was the motto of his whole life, ad majorem Dei gloriam, for the greater glory of God. He began with a sword, He ended with knees bent. You witnessed Ignatius's soul being broken, to be rebuilt in God's hands. You saw a vain man become a pilgrim. You saw tears become prayer, and God's silence become direction. If you also feel lost, exhausted, crushed by doubt and the pressures of this world, then know, maybe you are exactly where God needs you to be, because the cold floor may be the altar of a new calling, and the darkness, the veil about to be torn. St. Ignatius was not spared from pain. He was transformed by it. And if you felt that in your soul, don't let that flame die out. Comment Amen now. Leave your name here as an act of faith, and share this video with someone you know who needs direction, comfort, a new purpose. Join our spiritual community here at the Heaven's Breath channel. Here we tell stories that touch the invisible to transform the now. If you made it this far, it's because something in you is being called. And if your soul was touched by this story, subscribe now and activate notifications, because new stories are coming, and each of them might be the answer you've been praying for. Ad majorem Dei gloriam, for the greater glory of God.